Yo, what's good with you? Back in black with another Enlisted video. If you guys are new to the channel and you love shooting games just like me, make sure you aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. Today we are going to be taking a look at all the BR1 rifles for the Russians and Enlisted to see which of them is the best for you in your particular playstyle. Starting out with the Mosin 1907 Carbine. This is the default rifle for the Russians, and it was a shortened, more updated version of the Mosin 1891 rifle made for the second line troops in particular. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm not 100% sure why they only gave it to the second line, because in the context of the game, it would seem to me that they were actually very well equipped, as subjectively this rifle is very quick and snappy, has great damage, and the best non-circular iron sights in the tier. On the more stats driven side, we are tied for lowest damage in the tier at 20.5 per shot, but even if that is the lowest damage, that is nothing to scoff at, as anything over 10 damage points is enough to knock someone down into bandaging, if not kill them outright. And even out to 200 meters, we're still looking at a damage of 12.9 per shot. So like most bow action rifles in the game, you can consider this and all the other rifles we'll be talking about today to be one-hitter quitters for the most part. And moving on, as far as the bullet velocity is concerned, even for a starter rifle, we're looking at 775 meters per second, which is really good if I'm being completely honest, and even better than the German contemporary rifle. But overall, unless we're looking at extremely long distances, the shots should more or less connect instantly and require minimal leading of the target, unless you're lagging or something of that nature. And although I have been singing the praises of this gun thus far, I do unfortunately have to list out the downsides, which luckily there's only one that should have a real noticeable impact on your gameplay. And unfortunately it is pretty important to bow action rifles, and I'm talking about the rate of fire, which is worst in tier at 42 rounds per minute. Pretty damn slow if I do say so myself, and it is an unfortunate stat to read for a carbine, which I feel should be more acclimated to closer range combat, but perhaps that is why they gave it to the second line troops in particular. Regardless, you can mitigate that fire rate with the bow action rechambering speed perk if need be. And I'll also reiterate that even though there isn't necessarily a stat for it, the 1907 Mosin feels like it has the fastest aim down sight speed and sprint to fire speed out of all three rifles, so I suppose that is a worthy trade-off as far as the fire rate is concerned. We're also looking at a tier worst reload speed at 3.4 seconds, which can feel like a drag sometimes, so feel free to remedy that with the reload speed perk as well. The last noteworthy stat for this rifle is the shot deviation, which again unfortunately is worst in tier at 17, which means when you shoot this rifle repeatedly you may miss a shot or two at really far range. But personally I don't really find that to be a problem, as typically I'm not trying to fight people across the map with my iron sights carbine bow action rifle, so make of that what you will. Coming in at rifle number 2 for the day, we gotta take a look at the Mosin 1938 Carbine, as this gun looks to usurp the 1907 Carbine by fulfilling the same niche with congruent damage and bullet velocity, but also looks to differentiate itself with a brand new iron sight and a brand new receiver. And I can't say purely looking at the stats, it does exactly what it sets out to do by having a best in tier fire rate at 54 rounds per minute, which clears the other two rifles by a pretty good margin, if I do say so myself. So if you're looking to get a lot of shots down range, automatically the 1938 Carbine is going to be your best bet. Reload speed is ever so slightly, and I do mean ever so slightly, better than the 1907 Carbine at 3.3 seconds, so essentially the same thing. And keeping in that theme of very marginal improvements, we also have a shot deviation 1 point lower than the 1907 at 16 shot deviation instead of 17. Oh, and did I mention that the 1938 Carbine also comes with a bayonet unlike the 1907? A very notable improvement indeed, as more utility at close range is always something worthy of consideration. But the only other thing that you really want to look at, literally and figuratively, when it comes to this rifle is whether you prefer a more flat open iron sight, or if you prefer the ring iron sight that is brand new for this rifle in particular. And I guess when it comes down to the nitty gritty, the fire rate is a very concrete absolute improvement that should definitely make the 1938 a no-brainer, but I will leave that up to you to consider whether the ring iron sight is something that you want to deal with. For our third and final contestant of the day, we gotta take a look at the Mosin M1891 Dragoon variant, which is in the running definitely for the coolest gun name in the game. But in light of its mystique and rarity in real life as far as the game goes, what makes this weapon worthy of usage mostly lies in the enhanced damage, coming in at a max of 23.7 per shot, which means this is definitely the rifle that will provide you with the most one-hit downs. Even out to 200 meters, we're looking at a damage of 15.9 per hit, and that's pretty much overkill for the lack of better words. So again, this is definitely the rifle that you want to pick, not only for downing your targets out to a very far distance, but also just for killing the most people outright as well. This rifle also sports a best in tier bullet velocity at 815 meters per second, which further enhances your range capability with this weapon, and also just further accentuates how this weapon is meant to be used at further range for the most part. We're also looking at a best in tier shot deviation at 15, which again is only 1 point higher, but 9 times out of 10, as long as your sights is on the target, the bullet should be on target as well when you pull the trigger. I would also be remiss not to mention the best in tier reload speed at 3.2 seconds, albeit only by 0.1 second, but it is still best in tier. And I do find it funny to think that the cavalry rifle is beating out the carbines as far as reloading faster, but that's neither here nor there. To slow this rifle down a little bit figuratively and literally, we do have a middle of the pack fire rate at 48 rounds per minute, so just something to balance it out a little bit. Otherwise this rifle might end up being the runaway favorite. Overall, these are just my opinions, but as far as ranking bolt action rifles, a lot of what sways me is pendant on the iron sights, because although it's not necessarily a stat or anything like that, whichever iron sight is going to make me most comfortable as far as like hitting targets consistently is going to have a large pull on, you know, which rifle I end up choosing as far as what I would want to use on a consistent basis, and I would expect you guys to be the same way. That said, there is a healthy dose of subjectivity in these rankings, but I'm going to go with the Mosin Dragoon at third place for as far as like what is most valuable. And although this rifle is the strongest and carries its damage out the furthest, maximizing that range isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do with those iron sights in particular. And from an offensive standpoint, making an effort to maximize my range isn't necessarily something that I try to align myself with, you know, when using rifleman squads. So that said, I feel like considering that this rifle is particularly specialized at far range combat, that only makes it good, you know, mostly on defense for the most part, and then that means the rifle kind of ends up niching itself too hard for my personal taste and doesn't have any other standout features that would make me tell someone to choose that over the other two. So as far as rankings, I gotta go with this one at third place. And not to mention that even though this one has really high damage, most of the people that you run into in BR1 or 2 are not going to be running high vitality squads anyway, so that high damage isn't even something that is completely necessary. Choosing second place was a little bit harder for me because subjectively I am a big fan of the open sights on the 1907, so a part of me did want to put that gun in first place, also considering the fact that the default rifles are always free to upgrade. But from an objective standpoint, the circular sights on the Mosin 1938 Carbine are almost just as good, if not equally on par. So that, and then the fact that the 1938 had a bayonet is also the two main things that was kind of like putting me on the fence. I think objectively speaking, when you look at the fire rate, that is like way better on the Mosin 1938 Carbine. I think that being said, it is actually worth it to work your way through actually having the ability to unlock 3 stars on your Mosin 1938 as well. But if you feel like you're too lazy to do that, then I would not blame you for putting the 1907 in first place. But all that being said, at the end of the day, these are just my personal opinions, but hopefully with the combination of my gameplay, my explanations, and your own personal preferences, you can help decide which rifle is best for you to spend your soldier on, buying over and over again to equip your soldiers, and also spending silver to upgrade your weapons over and over again as well. If you found any of this entertaining or insightful, don't forget to aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. Oh, and if you know any new friends who started playing Enlisted recently, don't forget to share this video with them as well, as I'm sure this would also be very useful as far as helping them decide which rifle they want to invest their time into the most as well. And yeah, other than that, if you have made it this far, I do appreciate you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Black Guy out.